Readings from Sri Aurobindo on the object of the integral yoga. It is the object of this yoga to transform life by bringing down into it the light, power, and bliss of the divine truth and its dynamic certitudes. This yoga is not a yoga of world-shunning asceticism, but of divine life. The fundamental difference is in the teaching that there is a dynamic divine truth, the supermind, and that into the present world of ignorance, that truth can descend, create a new truth consciousness, and divinize life. The old yogas go straight from mind to the absolute divine, regard all dynamic existence as ignorance, illusion, or lila. When you enter the static and immutable divine truth, they say, you pass out of cosmic existence. The integral yoga is new as compared with the old yogas. 1. Because it aims not at a departure out of the world and life into a heaven or a nirvana, but at a change of life and existence, not as something subordinate or incidental, but as a distinct and central object. If there is a descent in other yogas, yet it is only an incident on the way or resulting from the ascent. The ascent is the real thing. Here, the ascent is indispensable, but what is decisive, what is finally aimed at, is the resulting descent. It is the descent of the new consciousness attained by the ascent that is the stamp and seal of the sadhana. Even Tantra and Vaishnavism end in the release from life. Here, the object is the divine fulfillment of life. 2. Because the object sought after is not an individual achievement of divine realization for the sole sake of the individual, but something to be gained for the earth consciousness here, a cosmic, not solely a supracosmic achievement. The thing to be gained also is the bringing in of a power of consciousness, the supramental, not yet organized or active directly in earth nature, even in the spiritual life, but yet to be organized and made directly active. 3. Because a method has been preconized for achieving this purpose, which is as total and integral as the aim set before it, the total and integral change of the consciousness and nature, taking up old methods, but only as a part action and passing on to others that are distinctive. I have not found this method as a whole, or anything like it in its totality, proposed or realized in the old yogas. Our yoga is not a retreading of old walks, but a spiritual adventure. You must get out of certain wrong ideas about this yoga, for these are dangerous and ought to be thrown away by every sadhak. 1. The object of yoga is not to become like Sri Aurobindo or the Mother. Those who cherish this idea easily come to the further idea that they can become their equals or even greater. This is only to feed the ego. 2. The object of yoga is not to get power or to be more powerful than others, or to have great siddhis, or to do great or wonderful or miraculous things. 3. The object of yoga is not to be a great yogi or a superman. This is an egoistic way of taking the yoga and can lead to no good. Avoid it altogether. 4. To talk about the supramental and think of bringing it down in yourself is the most dangerous of all. It may bring an entire megalomania and loss of balance. What the sadhak has to seek is the full opening to the divine, the psychic change of his consciousness, the spiritual change. Of that change of consciousness, selflessness, desirelessness, humility, bhakti, surrender, calm, equality, peace, quiet, sincerity are necessary constituents. Until he has the psychic and spiritual change, to think of being supramental is an absurdity, and an arrogant absurdity. All these egoistic ideas, if indulged, can only aggrandize the ego, spoil the sadhana, and lead to serious spiritual dangers. They should be rejected altogether. The aim of this yoga is, first, to enter into the divine consciousness by merging into it the separative ego. Incidentally, in doing so, one finds one's true individual self, which is not the limited, vain, and selfish human ego, but a portion of the divine. And, secondly, to bring down the supramental consciousness on earth and to transform mind, life, and body. All else can only be a result of these two aims, not the primary object of the yoga. The extreme difficulty of these two aims has never been concealed from the sadhaks. On the contrary, difficulties and dangers have been overemphasized rather than minimized. If they still choose and persist in this path, it is supposed that they are ready to risk everything, sacrifice everything, surrender everything in order to achieve this end or help toward its achievement. The way of yoga followed here has a different purpose from others, for its aim is not only to rise out of the ordinary ignorant world consciousness into the divine consciousness, but to bring the supramental power of that divine consciousness down into the ignorance of mind, life, and body, to transform them, to manifest the divine here and create a divine life in matter. This is an exceedingly difficult aim and difficult yoga. To many or most, it will seem impossible. All the established forces of the ordinary ignorant world consciousness are opposed to it, and deny it, and try to prevent it, and the sadhak will find his own mind, life, and body full of the most obstinate impediments to its realization. If you can accept the ideal wholeheartedly, face all the difficulties, leave the past and its ties behind you, and are ready to give up everything and risk everything for this divine possibility, then only can you hope to discover by experience the truth behind it. The sadhana of this yoga does not proceed through any set mental teaching or prescribed forms of meditation, mantras, or others, but by aspiration, by a self-concentration inwards or upwards, by self-opening to an influence, to the divine power above us and its working, to the divine presence in the heart, and by the rejection of all that is foreign to these things. It is only by faith, aspiration, and surrender that this self-opening can come. The aim of the yoga is to open the consciousness to the divine, to live in the inner consciousness more and more, while acting from it on the external life, to bring the inmost psychic into the front, and by the power of the psychic, to purify and change the being so that it may become ready for transformation and in union with the divine knowledge, will, and love. Secondly, to develop the yogic consciousness, i.e., to universalize the being on all the planes, become aware of the cosmic being and cosmic forces, and be in union with the divine on all the planes up to the overmind. Thirdly, to come into contact with the transcendent divine, beyond the overmind, through the supramental consciousness. Supramentalize the consciousness and the nature, and to make oneself an instrument for the realization of the dynamic divine truth and its transforming descent into the earth nature. Spiritual liberation means to be free from ego and from the imprisonment in the mind and vital and physical nature, and to be conscious of the spiritual self and live in that consciousness. Spiritual perfection and fulfillment means that the nature should be spiritualized, new formed in the consciousness of the free self and the divine consciousness of infinity, purity, light, power, bliss, and knowledge. The full transformation is the result of union with the divine consciousness. To be in full union with the divine is the final aim. When one has some kind of constant union, one can be called a yogi, but the union has to be made complete. There are yogis who have only the union on the spiritual plane, others who are united in mind and heart, others in the vital also. In our yoga, our aim is to be united too in the physical consciousness and on the supramental plane. The object of the yoga is to enter into and be possessed by the divine presence and consciousness. To love the divine for the divine's sake alone. To be turned in our nature into nature of the divine, and in our will and works and life to be the instrument of the divine. Its object is not to be a great yogi or a superman, although that may come, or to grab at the divine for the sake of the ego's power, pride, or pleasure. It is not for salvation, though liberation comes by it, and all else may come. But these must not be our objects. The divine alone is our object.